Strategic bombing changed warfare forever, turning distant cities into frontline targets and forcing entire nations under the shadow of aerial devastation. Long-range bombers became instruments of total war, carrying destruction across continents and oceans to strike the enemy homeland. This is the complete catalog of long-range bombers deployed in World War II. Every heavy and medium bomber that reached beyond the battlefield to attack industry, infrastructure, and civilian morale. United States Army Air Force's early heavy bombers. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, the legendary four-engine bomber that symbolized American air power, delivered massive daylight raids deep into Nazi Germany. The consolidated B-24 Liberator, built in greater numbers than any other American bomber, longer range than the Flying Fortress, but harder to fly. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress, the ultimate strategic bomber and most advanced aircraft of the war, dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. United States Army Air Force's medium bombers. The North American B-25 Mitchell, the twin-engine bomber that launched from carriers to raid Tokyo, served on every front throughout the war. The Martin B-26 Marauder, fast medium bomber with dangerous reputation and exceptional combat record, higher survivability than any other American bomber. The Douglas A-20 Havoc, light attack bomber operating at low altitude, devastated enemy positions across Europe and Pacific. The Douglas A-26 Invader, the most advanced American light bomber design, arrived late but dominated in final campaigns. United States Army Air Force's obsolescent types. The Douglas B-18 Bolo, pre-war medium bomber derived from DC-2 airliner, obsolete by Pearl Harbor but still in service. The Martin 10, revolutionary all-metal monoplane bomber of the 1930s, completely outclassed by 1941 standards. Royal Air Force heavy bombers. The Avro Lancaster, Britain's iconic four-engine heavy bomber and most effective, carried massive bomb loads across Germany nightly. The Handley Page Halifax, the second-line heavy bomber overshadowed by Lancaster fame, dropped more tonnage than any RAF bomber except Lancaster. The Short Stirling, Britain's first four-engine heavy bomber in service, limited ceiling restricted effectiveness against German defenses. The Avro Manchester, failed twin-engine heavy with unreliable Vulture engines, redesigned as the legendary Lancaster. Royal Air Force medium bombers. The Vickers Wellington, geodetic construction bomber nicknamed the Wimpy, backbone of Bomber Command until heavy bombers arrived. The Armstrong Whitworth Whiteley, early war heavy bomber used in first raids, transitioned to maritime patrol and training roles. The Handley Page Hamden, twin-engine medium bomber with cramped crew quarters, vulnerable to fighter attacks but effective early war. The Bristol Blenheim, light bomber outclassed by modern fighters, suffered catastrophic losses in daylight operations. The de Havilland Mosquito, the wooden wonder built without defensive armament, fastest bomber in service, outran enemy fighters. Soviet Air Force heavy bombers. The Petulakov P-8, the Soviet Union's only four-engine heavy bomber, produced in tiny numbers compared to Western heavies. The Ilyushin IL-4, twin-engine long-range bomber and primary Soviet strategic aircraft, bombed Berlin and supported ground operations. The Tupolev TB-3, massive four-engine biplane bomber from the 1930s, obsolete but used for paratroop drops and transport. Soviet Air Force medium bombers. The Petulakov P-2, fast twin-engine dive bomber nicknamed Peshka, most produced Soviet bomber with over 11,000 built. The Tupolev Tu-2, advanced medium bomber arriving late in war, superior performance to PE-2 in every category. The Ilyushin IL-2 Sturmovik, legendary ground attack aircraft and most produced military aircraft ever, devastated German armor on Eastern Front. The Sukhoi Su-2, light bomber and reconnaissance aircraft, obsolete by 1942 standards. Luftwaffe, heavy bombers. The Heinkel HE-177 Greif, Germany's only operational heavy bomber design, plagued by engine fires and mechanical failures. The Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condor, maritime patrol bomber converted from airliner, hunted Allied convoys over Atlantic. The Junkers Ju-290, long-range maritime reconnaissance and transport, limited production prevented widespread deployment. Luftwaffe, medium bombers. The Heinkel HE-111, the backbone of German bomber forces throughout war, iconic Battle of Britain participant. The Junkers Ju-88, the most versatile German aircraft design, served as bomber, dive bomber, night fighter, and reconnaissance. The Dornier Do-17, the flying pencil with slim fuselage design, obsolete by 1941 but served early war. The Dornier Do-217, improved development of Do-17 design, carried heavier bomb loads and advanced weapons. Luftwaffe, dive bombers. The Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, legendary dive bomber with screaming sirens, devastated ground targets but vulnerable to fighters. The Henschel HS-129, heavily armored ground attack aircraft, destroyed Soviet tanks with specialized cannons. Imperial Japanese Army, heavy bombers. The Mitsubishi K-21 Sally, twin-engine heavy bomber for mainland Asia operations, outclassed by Allied fighters. The Nakajima K-49 Donryu Helen, replacement for K-21 with heavier armament, still inadequate against modern defenses. The Mitsubishi K-67 Hiryu Peggy, Japan's best bomber design of the war, arrived too late in insufficient numbers. Imperial Japanese Army, medium bombers. The Kawasaki K-48 Lily, light bomber with inadequate range and payload, suffered heavy losses throughout Pacific. The Mitsubishi K-31 Anne, fixed-gear light bomber already obsolete by Pearl Harbor, withdrawn from frontline service quickly. The Kawasaki K-32 Mary, single-engine light bomber with poor performance, limited production, and brief service. Imperial Japanese Navy, land-based bombers. The Mitsubishi G3M Nell, twin-engined medium bomber that sank British battleships, pioneered long-range naval aviation tactics. The Mitsubishi G4M Betty, legendary long-range bomber with extreme fuel capacity, earned nickname Flying Lighter for explosive vulnerability. The Yokosuka P-1Y Ginga Francis, fast twin-engine bomber with excellent performance, too few produced too late. The Nakajima G5N Shinzon Liz, four-engine heavy bomber prototype, never entered mass production. The Nakajima G8N Renzon Rita, massive four-engine bomber designed for strategic missions, war ended before operational deployment. Regia Aeronautica, Italian bombers. The Savoia Marchetti SM-79 Spervero, tri-motor medium bomber and most important Italian design, effective torpedo bomber in the Mediterranean. The Savoia Marchetti SM-81 Pipistrello, three-engine bomber used in Ethiopia and Spain, obsolete but served early war. The Savoia Marchetti SM-84,
Improved SM-79 with twin engines instead of 3. Inferior performance to predecessor. The Fiat BR-20 Cicogna, twin-engine medium bomber deployed against Britain, poor performance and heavy losses. The Kant Z-1007 Alcione, tri-motor medium bomber with wooden construction, better performance than BR-20. The Piaggio P-108, Italy's only 4-engine heavy bomber, produced in minimal numbers.
France, pre-armistice bombers. The Amiot 143, boxy twin-engine bomber hopelessly obsolete by 1940, suffered devastating losses. The Block MB-210, heavy bomber design from mid-1930s, completely outclassed by German opposition. The LEO 451, modern medium bomber entering service in 1940, excellent design, arriving too late. The Farman F-222, 4-engine heavy bomber of limited effectiveness, small numbers in service. Poland, September 1939. The PZL-37, Walsh, advanced medium bombers superior to German types, most destroyed on ground. The PZL-23 Karash, light bomber and reconnaissance aircraft, brave attacks against overwhelming odds. Netherlands, May 1940. The Fokker TV, twin-engine medium bomber of Dutch design, negligible impact before surrender. Belgium, May 1940. The Ferry Battle, British light bomber operated by Belgian squadrons, catastrophic losses in desperate attacks. China, Allied support. The Martin B-10, American bombers operated by Chinese forces, defended against Japanese invasion. The Tupolev SB, Soviet bombers supplied to nationalist China, conducted raids against Japanese positions. Royal Air Force Lend-Lease bombers. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, heavies in RAF Coastal Command service, maritime patrol over the Atlantic. The consolidated B-24 Liberator, more Liberators served with RAF than any American unit, critical anti-submarine role. The North American B-25 Mitchell, medium bombers for RAF tactical units, supported Allied offensives. The Martin B-26 Marauder, operated by South African and other Commonwealth squadrons, Mediterranean theater operations. The Douglas Boston, British designation for A-20 Havoc, low-level strikes across occupied Europe.
Soviet Air Force Lend-Lease types. The North American B-25 Mitchell, American bombers supplementing Soviet production, operated on Eastern Front. The Douglas A-20 Havoc, thousands delivered to Soviet forces, ground attack and bombing missions. Commonwealth nations bomber operations. The Avro Lancaster, Canadian-built Lancasters in RCAF squadrons, joined 1,000-bomber raids over Germany. The Handley Page Halifax, Australian crews flew Halifaxes with RAF, global operations across all theaters. The Vickers Wellington, New Zealand squadrons operated Wellingtons, North Africa and Mediterranean campaigns. The Bristol Beaufort, Australian-built torpedo bombers, anti-shipping strikes across Pacific. Specialized strategic bombers. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress, pressurized cabin for high-altitude operations, revolutionary technology decades ahead. The consolidated B-32 Dominator, alternative to B-29 with conventional systems, limited production and service. The Douglas XB-19, massive experimental bomber prototype, too large and expensive for production. Pathfinder and target-marking aircraft. The de Havilland Mosquito, marked targets for main bomber streams. Speed and accuracy revolutionized night bombing. The Avro Lancaster, specially equipped Pathfinder Lancasters led raids, H-2S radar navigation systems. Night bombing specialists.
The Avro Lancaster carried massive tallboy and Grand Slam bombs, destroyed bridges, viaducts, and bunkers. The Handley Page Halifax, all-black night bomber configuration, area bombing across industrial Germany. The Vickers Wellington, early night bombing offensive backbone, transitioned to training as heavies arrived. Anti-shipping strike aircraft. The Bristol Beaufighter, heavily armed anti-shipping striker, devastated Axis convoys. The de Havilland Mosquito, precision strikes against shipping, cannon and rocket armament. The Savoia Marchetti SM.79, Italian torpedo bomber, extraordinarily effective, sank numerous Allied vessels. The Mitsubishi G4M Beatty, naval land-based torpedo bomber, long-range enabled distant strikes. Carpet bombing specialists. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, daylight precision bombing doctrine, 1,000-plane formations over Germany. The consolidated B-24 Liberator, oil refineries at Ploesti targeted, massive formations sustained heavy losses. The Avro Lancaster, firestorm raids on Hamburg and Dresden, area bombing controversial legacy. Low-level attack bombers. The Douglas A-20 Havoc, treetop-level strikes against ground targets, devastating firepower at close range. The North American B-25 Mitchell, skip bombing against Japanese shipping, masthead height attacks. The de Havilland Mosquito, precision strikes on Gestapo headquarters and prisons, pinpoint accuracy at extreme low altitude. Photo reconnaissance variants. The de Havilland Mosquito PR, unarmed reconnaissance variant with cameras, mapped enemy territory at high speed. The Boeing F-13 B-29 reconnaissance version, photographed Japanese home islands. The Lockheed F-5 reconnaissance P-38 Lightning, strategic intelligence gathering. Electronic warfare and countermeasures. The Boeing B-17 radar jamming and chaff-dropping variants, confused German air defenses. The Handley Page Halifax, electronic countermeasures Halifax variants, disrupted enemy radar networks. The consolidated B-24, ferret missions gathering radar intelligence, analyzed enemy defensive systems. Transport bomber conversions. The Avro Lancaster, converted to transport configuration post-war, emergency airlift capabilities. The consolidated B-24, transport variants carried cargo and personnel, global supply missions. The Boeing B-17, converted for VIP transport and liaison, high-altitude passenger capability. Experimental long-range designs. The consolidated B-36 Peacemaker, intercontinental bomber too late for war, 6-piston engines plus 4 jets. The Northrop XB-35, revolutionary flying wing bomber design, prototype only during wartime. The Boeing XB-39, B-29 testbed with alternative engines, experimental development platform. Jet and rocket bombers. The Arado 234 Blitz, world's first operational jet bomber, too few, too late. The Mitsubishi ME-262, fighter-bomber variant of revolutionary jet. Hitler's obsession delayed fighter production. Kamikaze bombing aircraft. The Mitsubishi G4M Betty, converted to suicide missions late war, carried Oka rocket bombs. The Yokosuka P-1Y Ginga, used in kamikaze attacks desperately, conventional bombing and suicide roles. Arctic and extreme climate operations. The consolidated B-24 Liberator, bombed Norwegian targets from Scotland, extreme range Arctic missions. The Petlyakov PE-8, operated in brutal Soviet winter conditions, maintained strategic pressure despite cold. Maritime patrol bombers. The consolidated PB-4Y Privateer, Navy variant of B-24 Liberator, extended anti-submarine patrols. The Boeing PB-1, Navy B-17 for maritime reconnaissance, hunted submarines across Pacific. The Short Sunderland, flying boat bomber and patrol aircraft, Atlantic convoy protection. Tactical bomber evolution. Light bombers evolved into fighter bombers during war. Single-seat fighters carried increasing bomb loads. Medium bombers grew heavier with more powerful engines. Distinction between medium and heavy blurred. Heavy bombers reached unprecedented size and range. Strategic bombing became independent warfare branch. Final bombing campaigns. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress firebombed Japanese cities systematically, conventional raids more destructive than atomic bombs. The Avro Lancaster maintained pressure on Germany until surrender. Final missions April 1945. The consolidated B-24 Liberator supported Allied advances across Europe, tactical and strategic roles combined. These long-range bombers transformed modern warfare forever. Strategic bombing brought total war to enemy homelands. Cities, factories, and populations became legitimate military targets. The age of aerial devastation began in World War II. Every combatant nation embraced strategic bombing despite moral questions. Victory demanded maximum force against industrial capacity and civilian will. Long-range bombers delivered that force across oceans and continents.